This episode of the Home Studio Hangout podcast is brought to you by Bliss. Bliss is a French audio developer focusing on developing creative and intuitive synths and effects. They've developed over 25 different plugins for Windows, Mac, and iOS for all of my iPhone and iPad producers. You can discover plugins such as the Bliss Monolith, which is a mono synth they have for free, as well as the Bliss Arpeggiator, Bliss Megalith Wavetable Synthesizer, or Bliss Voices, the ultimate vocal harmonizer. Go to bliss.com, that's BLEASS.com, and use the promo code HOMESTUDIOHANGOUT, all one word, to save 20% off of your next order. Thank you to Bliss for sponsoring this episode of the Home Studio Hangout podcast. Now, let's get back to the conversation. Welcome back to the Home Studio Hangout podcast. I'm your host, Drew, and today we're doing something a little special. It is a solo episode day. I wanted to do something a little different for July 4th, which is the day that you're listening to this. I mean, it could be after, but it's the day that this is releasing, July 4th, and didn't want to take up too much time with family and all that kind of things going on today. Give you something nice and tight and interesting to listen to. So recently, I had the pleasure of going out to Houston to produce a record for a buddy named Jason Brown. It's been a couple years, I think, since I've traveled for work like this. I want to say since about 2019, since I've had a fly date for production. And, a lot's changed since then. We've had a pandemic since then. And on top of all of that, I've just changed over the last 5 years on how I approach production and all of those things. And on the plane ride back, there were just so many good conversations that I had with Jason while I was there. I grabbed my little field notes notebook, which I've started carrying around with me everywhere, and started writing down just kind of a bunch of things that I learned during the trip. And I figured today I'd just share a little bit about what I learned on this trip to Houston, Texas, producing this record. So I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet for you guys. So the first thing I learned, and this is, not even something that I wrote down, but just something that I thought about, is that when you're doing a fly date for production, have an extra travel day or two in mind. So what happened with us is on the flight there, my flight ended up getting canceled. Well, our initial idea had been to start production that evening, the day that I was supposed to fly in. So I was supposed to fly in on I believe it was a Wednesday, and I was supposed to leave that morning, get there also that morning, and then take a little bit of a break, and then that afternoon start getting set up and ready for, producing this record we were going to work on. What happened was the airplane ended up getting canceled. I don't know if the flight just got removed or what. Something happened and the flight got canceled. So I ended up getting rebooked. But the only possible flight I could get to Houston that same day was a flight to Chicago with a 2-hour layover and then another flight to Houston. And I wasn't going to get there until I believe I ended up getting there about 11:30 at night, because I didn't leave Greenville until about 4 or 5 or something like that. And so that kind of ruined an entire day. I did end up getting there, everything clean, safe, all that kind of stuff, and ended up being able to set up that evening, set up my computer, set up the space we were going to record in, stayed up till about 1 or 2 a.m., getting everything set up and going to bed. But just having that extra day really kind of screwed us up later, because when we got to the end of the recording process, we ended up having to push my leaving flight, coming back to Greenville, leaving Houston, back a day in order to finish vocals. So because not even we, but because my flights got messed up on the way there, it ended up messing up our schedule on the way back as well. Which is fine to be expected. I ended up having to, get another flight the next day, kind of in the middle of the day, so I could make it back here to not miss my son Micah's baseball game. But, we ended up being able to finish all of the vocals and a couple of extra things, set up a remote recording chain as well for them while they were there. But yeah, when you're traveling and doing some sort of like fly date production, even just like making a mental note of the day that you're supposed to be there, maybe book an extra day before or 2 days before to make sure that regardless of flight cancellations, you're able to get there, get set up, kind of decompress, and then be ready to hop in and ready to work. So this next thing was something that kind of came up in conversation with me and Jason as we were working, and we tried to start every day with a really good cup of coffee. Now, you might not be a coffee drinker. You might be a coffee drinker, but I think, if you are, you can agree with this, which is like a quality cup of coffee in the morning can set you up for a day of really focused work. And what Jason and I were talking about, every day when we were trying to, go through this conversation of what are we going to do this today? What are we trying to get done? Making it not only a quality cup of coffee, but making it a quality cup of coffee with a slow morning on a production day that is about to get really, really busy and really, really focused. Having that slow-paced morning with a nice quality cup of coffee so that you can sit there and just think and prepare for the day, I think sets you up for such a much better, more focused time of work when you are in the thick of it and you're ready to go. Gets you up in the morning and, pumps you up and gets you ready to go. And then, like I said, whenever you're in the midst of the actual recording process, you are locked in, you are ready to go, you have a plan, and you're just executing checklists and being creative inside that box then. The third thing I learned is, and I wrote this down, this is how I wrote this down, is all you can do is plan well and be flexible and move with intent. And this kind of has to do with the first thing as well, but, planning well, being able to be flexible as far as things come to you, you're able to pivot, you're able to make things work. I was walking into a recording situation where I wasn't 100% sure what the room was going to be like. I wasn't 100% sure what I was bringing a couple mics with me, but I wasn't 100% sure what the mic situation was going to look like either, what the room situation, not even what the player situation was going to look like. I was walking into this situation pretty blind, but I did as much preparation as I possibly could on the front end, doing things like prepping pre-pro tracks, making sure that, some of the parts were arranged how we needed them to be, walking in with demos and things ready to go, having already sent a couple of pre-production ideas to them, and the drummer has kind of worked on some of these parts going into this whole process. This way, we're able to walk in, get ready, and at least I know that he and I are working from we're starting from the same place as far as the material goes. So it's a lot easier to work and be flexible when you've done that much preparation work. But then being flexible, being able to coach, a drummer or a bass player or a vocalist on how to get where they need to go, and kind of being willing to take the time and not get frustrated and, help push them in the direction that the song needs to go is huge. And all of that prep work will lead you into being able to be a lot more flexible when the time comes. And then moving with intent, like I said, with the second tip, with the starting slow, with the coffee and all that kind of stuff, prepping for your focus, those parts of the days, when you create your to-do list, your checklist for the day, that's moving with intent. You're moving with an end goal in mind for the day. So you're saying, at the end of this session today, we want to get X things done. And so that way you're not thinking about anything else other than trying to knock out these X things. Then if you have time left over, or if something comes up and you need to pivot, the second half of this, be flexible. We gotta be flexible and move with that. But as long as we're moving with intention, everything will kind of funnel towards the same direction of focus, it's going to be significantly easier to get the things done and make the progress that you need to make. And obviously, this doesn't have to be just in a remote project situation. That's a good thing for you to practice even at home in a home studio, whether you're working with yourself or working for other people. Number 4, second to last thing, do everything to make tracking as comfortable as possible. And this is something, again, that me and Jason talked about kind of in the process of this recording, is that, we were working out of his house. We were working out of his space that he had, and he had like a theater room, and that's where we ended up tracking drums. He really loved the fact of the comfortableness that we were able to work with, the pace. I was willing to push when I needed to push, but I was also willing to slow down and, take it easy and take a break whenever we needed to take a break, whenever he was like, I'm not feeling this, let's move, having that like ability to be like, all right, cool. I'm here to make you, the artist, as comfortable as possible within reason. Obviously we have to get things done, but there are things that can get done while, maybe the artist is taking a break. And we'll talk about that in a second. But a big part of what our conversation is he was like, I've been in LA studios, I've been in Nashville studios, and I've never been as comfortable working as I have been this week, which was a huge compliment to him, honestly, to me. And like, I really appreciate those words. But on top of that, I think this is a thing of a comfortable artist is going to perform better, especially when we got to vocals. He was feeling really good about going into his vocal takes. I was willing to work with him. I was willing to, crack jokes and, be friendly. We were able to go eat dinner and really get to know each other a lot better throughout the course of this week. And that was really big as well, being able to take time to not just it be transactional from a point of, this person is paying me to do their project, but also like we're creating a friendship here. We're creating a working relationship, but also just like a friendship here. And me taking time to do that is going to make the artist more comfortable when I crack a joke or when I need to get serious and be like, hey, we need to push here. Hey, we need to try this again. Hey, I think you can do that better. Creating that comfortability is massive. And this, once again, this is something that you can do whether you're doing remote production or self-production or whatever. Whenever you're working with another person, having that rapport, being willing to make, your studio space comfortable, your demeanor relaxed, making their demeanor relaxed, making them a cup of coffee, making them a tea, giving them, maybe like a snack or something to drink, maybe going out to lunch before, scheduling some time around the session to grab food. And food is the great, bringer together of people, I think. And if we can, take some of these things and apply it to every artist that we do, we're going to get better tracks from the artist. And lastly, number 5 kind of has to do a little bit with that same thought, which is editing as you go for better, more confident takes. So thinking in the idea of comfortability and confidence for the artist, another thing I did was whenever Jason was like, I need to take a break, I'm like, awesome. I got to editing immediately. I didn't wait till we were done. I made sure that the drums were edited before we tracked anything else. I edited the pre-pro tracks to make sure that they were locked in on time so that when the drummer tracked his tracks, he was tracking to, a really good take to a click. And so we could feel the tempos better. And then as the drums were done, I edited those. And as we were tracking guitars, I was going through and making sure those were locked in time-wise, nudging and whatnot. And so when we got to vocals, he was tracking to a really well-polished demo, essentially, like a really well-polished, rough mix. And I was even doing a little bit of mixing kind of as I was going. Not only is that going to help me, later down the line, just make sure that everything's locked in. I'm already doing the work while I'm there. I'm taking this time that, the artist needs to take some downtime and rest, relax, do those things. And I'm honing in on doing all of the, more tedious work that the artist doesn't really need to be there for anyway. So I'm locking in, knocking out these edits. Now the artist comes back, they're ready to track vocals. They're tracking to more of a well-produced out track. Their productions and their tracks and their takes are going to be better because they're going to hear themselves in a more, quote, finished product. Not really, but, closer to a finished product rather than just like really rough off time takes of drums and weird edits and, not cross-faded stuff. And, I'm trying to make sure that all of these things are feeling well-produced when we're getting to the vocal as much as possible. Now, in my situation here, I was working on a shorter timeline. We only had a week to do about 5 songs. So I was, a couple nights I stayed up super late trying to knock out these edits so that we could that I could make sure we were staying on track the next couple days. So, pushing myself a little bit there. But in the end, it helped us when our time crunch happened at the end when we realized, oh, we need an extra day. Instead of needing an extra 2 days, I was confident in saying, yeah, we really only need about an extra half day or one extra full day, essentially, so that we can finish out all these vocals. We can work slowly. I can at least get a really great lead vocal take and comp and tune for all of this stuff so that now I can take it home back to where I'm at right now and I can add harmonies. I can add extra guitar parts if we feel like we need it. But the drums, the bass, the main guitar, main rhythm or acoustic, and the main vocal are all there ready to go. And now I can add all of the extra bells and whistles around it. And that's the 5 things that I learned from my trip to Houston, doing my production out there with Jason Brown. Jason, thanks again for all of your hospitality and treating me so well. Really grateful for all of that. And, I'm really excited for his project. It's coming along really, really well. I'm very excited to see where that's going to be, at least at time of recording. By the time this is out, we might be getting closer to done as well, which is going to be really, really fun. But I hope you took some things away from this. I think these 5 things are kind of applicable. Some things are applicable kind of across the board. I think a couple of these are a little more specific, but you could definitely take some things away from this and kind of apply it to yourself, apply it to if you need to travel, or apply it to when you're working, even a day when you're, driving somewhere and working somewhere where you're not used to. I do those as well. And, I tried to build in that extra time. Now I tried to build in all of that and take a lot of these things that I've learned in this situation moving forward is going to shift how I kind of approach a lot of my more, travel production gigs. So I hope you're able to take some of that away as well. And hey, if you listen to this and you're an artist and you've ever wanted to hire me for mixing or production, remote production like what I'm talking about, go to musicbydrew.com and feel free to hit me up. I'd love to chat about your project and see if it's something that we can work on together. That'd be great. I love doing these fly dates and these remote production gigs, and it's been such a fun thing to kind of get back into since, the whole travel thing got shut down and it's kind of died down now. I feel a lot better about getting back out there and doing more stuff. Also, while you're here, go ahead and like and subscribe. And thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Home Studio Hangout podcast. It's a little different. I think that these might happen a little more often. So just let me know if it's something that you enjoy. Either comment down below on the YouTube video, or if you're on Spotify, you can actually reply to there's a little question box that says like, what'd you think about this episode? You can actually even send in something there, or just shoot me a DM on Instagram at Music by Drew or the Home Studio Hangout Instagram at Home Studio Hangout. Once again, thank you for listening to this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Home Studio Hangout podcast. If you could take the time to like, subscribe. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other audio platform, go ahead and make sure you're subscribed, and also leave a rating and a review. It helps the show get out to new people, and we're trying to grow every single week. Once again, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Home Studio Hangout podcast, and we'll see you next week.